I hope you don't get the sickness.
My boy Kurt is a stay-at-home dad, watching Disney movies he never had. His daughter digs through all the VHS, crushing the classics in a princess dress. Informed like Scuttle, Kurt's got your ticket, making it real like Jiminy Cricket. Most off the Captain Hook, but if the Tweedle dumb, he'll be taking more shots than Bambi's mom. Leaves him raised like Simba, or cracked like the beast dishes. He'll show you a whole new world, you won't need 3 wishes. Stay-at-home Disney dad.
Very curious about this movie. It's a big day. I'm expecting big things, and I'm going to try to do it justice because we're dealing with some sensitive topics here. I watched the sequel first like a year ago, which is kind of funny, but it is what it is. My daughter picks these VHS movies randomly. Now, I know of Pocahontas, and I think I know as much about the real Pocahontas as they taught me in high school, which, you know, made the settlers look like the heroes, which I'm kind of skeptical now looking back. But regardless, this is one of Disney's more celebrated masterpieces, but they also don't have a good track record of tasteful Indigenous representation. So again, really excited to watch this and see how everyone is portrayed. Quick Google search, quote, Pocahontas' name means little mischief. She's based on the real historical figure and was born into a highly sophisticated Native American culture that knew about Europeans. Her design was modeled after her voice actress Irene Bedard, who happens to be Native American herself. That's fun. Let's press play, let's do this. Already, I'm in love with the animation. See, I know I'm beating a dead horse, I say this all the time. This is the animation Hercules should have had. Like, it was such a shame because I love Greek mythology and I wanted that to be my favorite Disney movie of all time, but it was just so goofy. Okay, John Smith is gonna quote, fight, and I'm quoting the movie, but I'm still beeping out the I word. Growing up in Canada in the 80s and 90s, people would throw that word around like it was nothing. I can remember singing extremely racist songs about the Indigenous people in like kindergarten. It's nuts to look back and think about those times. Okay, they sing a happy march to war song as they board the ships, but then they hard cut to the inevitable storm and people are being tossed around like salad. John Smith shows how hero he is by jumping into the water to save someone. Then we meet the bad guys, Radcliffe. He wants gold. Okay, actually they all want gold, but if, quote, any tries to stop me, I will blast them, says John Smith. He calls them savages, another word that is so uncomfortable. Also, this isn't Peter Pan, this is the 90s. We knew better by then, and yes, I get that we were establishing the settlers' view of the Indigenous people, but still, some kid is gonna watch this and take that term back to school with them. Not cool. Nice title screen though, I'm digging this. We switched to the Indigenous or First Nations people. Disney, the colors and landscapes they used for the Indigenous camps and forests and water are some of Disney's best animation work. The pink skies, dark blue water, this is awesome. This looks so good. One of the best looking 90s cartoons I've seen so far. Pocahontas is trying to decipher a dream she's been having. This is also one of my favorite 2D animation styles so far as well. This movie's winning me over. Pocahontas is being pressured into an arranged marriage she's not down with. She goes for a canoe ride and sings her song about being just around the river bend, and the animation here, again, just kicks so much. The movie looks so good. She has a raccoon sidekick as well. Should probably mention that. Miko the raccoon. She talks to the spirit of her grandma, so we're seeing the real side of the Indigenous people to contrast against the ignorance of the settlers. But we need another reminder. So we're back to John Smith on the boat, and we're back to calling them savages again, and the dudes still want gold. I'll give Disney and this movie early credit. It's a nice change of pace to see characters of color with some complex character development, right? Pocahontas doesn't want to marry this guy because he's too serious, and if you ask yourself, why so serious? I did as well. And if you laughed at your own Heath Ledger joke, I did as well. And I like to think Heath Ledger probably watched Pocahontas a million times while he locked himself in that hotel room for weeks preparing for the Joker role. They dock and Pocahontas lays her eyes on John Smith for the first time, and she likes what she sees. Sure, he wouldn't think twice about killing her and her entire family or community for a couple pieces of gold, but at least he's not so serious. The greedy white folk sing a song about digging while Pocahontas creeps on John Smith from behind a tree. This digging song sounds like a greedy alcoholic's version of hi-ho. And like most good relationships, they start with John Smith jumping through a waterfall ready to shoot Pocahontas with a musket, but he doesn't because she's all beautiful and stretching and arching on a giant rock in the water. Funny how desire trumps all your preconceived notions sometimes, right? That's accurate. That's an accurate representation. John Smith is so smitten that he doesn't even notice there's a raccoon sitting in her canoe like a human. That's some next level crush. I mean, I've seen some beautiful women in my days, but I've always noticed when their friends were anthropomorphic. Anyway, it's on like Donkey Kong, and we can point out in this scenario, it's actually John Smith who came here looking for gold. So while I ain't saying he's a gold digger, sorry, I was singing and I missed something, but after a scuffle, it's decided that no Montague is allowed near a Capulet. Pocahontas has her arm, she has an arm tattoo. That's interesting. That's pretty badass. Pocahontas rocking a partial sleeve in the 90s. Probably didn't see too many of those on your bonneted settler gals, did you, John? John and Pocahontas meet and they're swooning over each other, but in no time at all, Smith is straight up mansplaining to the gal, and he tries to backpedal and accidentally calls her a savage. Bro, just keep digging this fast and you'll find that gold in no time. She breaks into Colors of the Wind. Love this song. Honestly, one of the best Disney songs ever. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here and predict that either their love will end the hate and unite the settlers and indigenous people together as one, or it won't. Limited storyline options here, folks. She hears war drums, that ain't good. She runs off. Governor Ratcliffe Wiggins. Why do you think those insolent heathens attacked us? Wiggins. Because we invaded their land and cut down their trees and dug up their earth. Governor Ratcliffe. It's the gold. They have it. They don't want us to take it from them. The settlers keep saying, and I can't tell if it's on purpose to make them seem ignorant or if they're just using that term because it was 1995 and it had yet to kind of become a frowned upon racial slur at that time. Pocahontas is jawing with one of her gal pals as they pick corn, and John Smith emerges from the bushes like a creeper and they run off together. John Smith lays on his back, and I swear Pocahontas' eyes dart south for like a split second. These two have enough sexual tension to round 48 river bends at this point. Then Grandma's spirit in the tree, okay, Grandma Willow, talks directly to John Smith, and he's spooked, but she says, don't worry, my bark is worse than my bite. And number one, I bet this character was created just around that single line of dialogue. And number two, don't get Grandma Willow confused with former WWF Intercontinental European and Tag Team Champion, the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, whose bite was definitely worse than his bark. It's time for Smith to go. They say goodbye. He rubs her face and he steals a look at her cleavage. I'm not making that up, folks. Watch for it. The creek water can't be cold enough for these two at this point. Dozens of more indigenous warriors arrive by canoe, and now they can, quote, deflate the white demons. I think I meant to type defeat, but John Smith could probably use some deflating, if you know what I mean. Pocahontas begs for peace. No, there's a war brewing. Now it's John's turn to tell his men they don't need to fight. Nope, mind-blowing animation of Pocahontas running beside a fence. I can't describe it, you just have to see it. So well done. I love this movie. One guard on duty, he's on top of the giant fence. He has an axe, but not like a throwing axe, like a giant executioner's axe. Then to remind us this is a kid's movie, a silly dog gets his head stuck in a log. Har har. Back to the battle, and suddenly they kiss, like John and Pocahontas kiss. But as they do that, one of John's men and one of Pocahontas' men observe this, and they jump in to attack. Supporting character and friend of John Smith, Thomas, voiced by Christian Bale, ends up shooting Pocahontas' I believe, future arranged marriage husband after another fantastic animated fight sequence. This movie, it's so good. We had that dog with his head stuck in a log before we saw this cold-blooded murder. John is captured and they bring them both, the murdered and John, back to the indigenous camp. It's morning. John's going to be the first to die before the indigenous army storms the others. Pocahontas tried, but honestly, not very hard to convince her people that Smith is innocent, but he's taken away and tied to a pole. John tells her he'd rather die tomorrow than live 100 years without her. Wow, there's realistic relationship goals. Thomas runs back to camp and is like, where's the trigger? Just kidding. Thomas is like, it's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me. But for real, Thomas is like, a hero can be anyone, even a man doing something as simple as reassuring as putting his coat around a young boy's shoulder to let him know that the world hasn't ended. I'm a big fan. That was fun. Thomas rounds the troops for real, and we get an actual song about savages, and I'm back in kindergarten. I'm just going to ignore this part. The raccoon gives Pocahontas John Smith's compass, and she has a compass revelation. It's the arrow from her dreams, and it's pointing her north. Both camps march towards each other, ready to kill, and we get the savage song again. Now they're going to bash John Smith's head in with a club. Damn, he winces and everything. Pocahontas saves him and delivers a sermon to her people about peace. The wind picks up, and this is actually giving me goosebumps, people. This is a great scene. This is a great movie. Her father calls for peace and the indigenous people stand down. The gold-loving leader, Ratcliffe, says it's a trick and he tells his people to open fire. They refuse, so he grabs a gun and he fires and he hits Smith, his own guy. There's your bumbler, and the house of cards crumples and we fade to black. Now, they're boarding boats to leave and Smith is bandaged up and dying, but he wants to wait for Pocahontas because he wants her to come with him, and I guess he's not dying. She emerges from the fog. Can't get over this animation. This is top notch. I totally get why this movie is held up as an absolute Disney classic, but it should be higher. Is it just not fun? Too few animals? I don't know. Anyway, Pocahontas has to choose her own path. She chooses to stay. I did not see that coming. This movie is busting all Disney norms. We didn't even really get that drawn out end of the third act death scare, because like after John got shot, it faded to black and faded back up and he was still alive. So it ends with Pocahontas standing on a cliff watching the ship sail off. Like, just wow. I guess she can go back to the village now and carry on with her arranged marriage to that guy. Oh, right. Thomas, you scoundrel. Swear to me. This is rightfully so held in high Disney praise. It's a masterpiece. Now I'm really curious. I'm going to Google reception of this movie and cut and paste from the internet. Pocahontas received mixed reactions from reviewers who praised this animation and music, but criticized its story with its lack of focus and tone. The film's historical inaccuracies and racial overtones received polarized responses. Pocahontas earned over $346 million at the box office. The film received 2 Academy Awards for Best Musical or Comedy Score for Menken and the Best Original Score for Colors of the Wind. According to critics, Pocahontas' influenced subsequent films. Timed with Pocahontas' 400th birthday, Pocahontas had a limited release in North America on June 16, 1995, playing only 60 selected theaters, and it grossed $2.7 million during its first weekend, standing in 8th place in the box office. It beat the record set by The Lion King the previous year for the highest grossing opening weekend on fewer than 50 screens, the record that has not been beaten since. All right. Some say it's largely bland and uninspired, even plotting, and an unfortunate lack of fun. Gonna just keep reading verbatim because, you know, being a settler myself, I don't feel completely comfortable praising this movie, although after watching Peter Pan, they're trying. They've come a long way in the representation of the Indigenous people. If nothing else, you have to give them that a little bit. Okay, Wikipedia says, according to Chief Roy Crazy Horse of the Powhatan Nation, the film distorts history beyond recognition, and perpetuates a dishonest and self-serving myth at the expense of the Powhatan Nation. He claims Disney refused the tribe's offer to help create a more culturally and historically accurate film. Wow. Angela Alice of the LA Times said Pocahontas and other portrayals of the Indian princess rarely shows her having anything more important in her life than her relationships with men. Professor and director of Indigenous Nation Studies Cornwell Purity argues that the film representation damages native stereotypes. Okay, so it wasn't all good stuff.
That's what I think about.
What do you think?
What we have is a concern about Curtis Anderson. His interviewing style is not the best. His personal appearance is not the best. I was wondering if the man has some kind of a hold over the channel that he's allowed to be employed for so long with the standards of journalism and personal appearance that he has. Thank you.